Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. I thought for sure that we were going to finally just randomly have a game with the Steelers during the show so we could do live commentary. And I thought, oh, it would just end up, I would let you just sign off and I would just keep talking the entire game. And then people could decide because I complain about the announcers all the time. And so normally the games that line up with the show, I really don't care about because like most championship games are on Sunday or Monday. And the Steelers only play on the weekend. But they postponed the game because the Ravens had so many positive tests. So it got pushed back to Monday, then to Tuesday. And I thought that's going to be it. It's going to be Tuesday night. We can do the show right in the second half of the game or whatever. I don't know what time they were going to start. But more tests came in positive. And they push it back to Wednesday. So, unfortunately, you're not going to have a super long show of me giving my thoughts and commentary on the game. It's going to be like my highlight reel or like a demo track that bands put together and they send out. Like, here's my tape. I'll send it to all the major networks. Like, here, you guys need a color commentator, a play-by-play guy. I can do both. I'm doing it with myself right here. But before we get into the Steelers, though, because they haven't played, I got to talk about the Broncos. The Broncos got screwed. I don't know. Do they just hate John Elway because of how he acted like a pompous ass when he had Peyton Manning? And I know there are some Bronco fans that listen to the show. So I'm on the side of the Broncos right now. But I will say that there's no way for the NFL to act the way that they did. Because I don't understand why the Broncos didn't have their game pushed back, but the Ravens and the Steelers kept getting pushed back. Because from the optics of it, it looks like the Ravens got pushed back because of the positive tests on the Ravens. Like they weren't going to be able to travel into Pittsburgh. And that's how it read again today. They finally got cleared to fly in this afternoon. I guess it's more like this evening at 6 p.m. So they're going to be there for tomorrow's game. Once they're there, I don't think they're going to send them home or anything. But the Broncos, they're definitely being used as an example because they broke protocol with their quarterback room. And what happened, I mean, basically all their quarterbacks got infected. I don't know what the details are exactly, but you already lost all your quarterbacks. That's it. You're not going to win. Like, I don't know if they talked to Tim Tebow, but like that would have been my first call. Like, hey, Tim, I know you got married sometime, maybe recently. Probably not into football right now, but could you just come quarterback? I know we have a different coach from when you were here, and a bunch of other stuff happened. But come in and just give the fans some hope. We already have the jerseys. We have a whole warehouse full of them. We can sell them at the game. Although we don't have fans anyway, so that doesn't really matter. We'll just ship them out. But instead, nothing. They didn't let them do anything. So they had to play a wide receiver at quarterback that I think, was he quarterback at Wake? Is that
Possibly.
where? Wake Forest. I can't remember exactly because they were throwing so many different scenarios out. But I just wanted to bring that up to start the show. That
Well, they
the
were
NFL,
approved to use a coach. Like they could have like coaches that are like, yeah, if you want to use a coach, go ahead.
No, they tried that. They got shut down. That was going to be my other point.
I thought they approved it for it.
No. The NHL approves it, but they were going to. I'm gonna try to see what the official statement is, but I don't think that they got approved. It was denied by the league. So they had to start undrafted rookie practice squad receiver Kendall Hinton at quarterback. They wanted to start Rob Calabrese, their offensive quality control coach, who's been with the team for the past 2 years. So they put in their waiver to get that done. And the NFL said no. That's how I know that they're using them as like setting an example with them. Because there's no way that, and that's where I'm going to say, because like gamblers and fantasy players and everyone has like a line set on the sport in some way. Like there's money being moved. And so for the NFL to just be like, no, we're going to blow that up to teach them a lesson. Like I was baffled by it because there was no reason for them not to let him play. Like the NHL lets that happen. Sometimes they have like guys just come in and be goalies just because. Like they're just at the arena. I think that guy in Chicago, did he win a game or something like that because of something like that? So I remember talking about something before on the show. But you have a guy, and Hinton was from Wake Forest. He was a quarterback there. But there's only one guy there. So, like, even if you would have said, hey, let's let our coach be the starting quarterback, that's who we want to put out there, Hinton's going to be our backup, they had no backup. Like, if he would have got hurt during the game, what would they have done?
I don't know. Would have been interesting.
So, all the nightmare scenarios for me as I try to get fantasy football ready for the year, like, some teams are hitting it, and the NFL is just barely guiding that line where luckily it's only been one or two teams a week that seem to be hit by it. But the teams that are, like the NFL just picks, okay, we're going to smash them right now. Like, hey, let's give the Ravens some extra time to prepare. Like, RG3, I think he's going to be the starting quarterback tomorrow. He's probably out on his own, like trying to do stuff, watching more film, giving him a couple of days extra prep for the Steelers, basically. I mean, I don't understand why, if they didn't meet the threshold or whatever, just travel without the guys. You're making the Broncos play with a wide receiver at quarterback.
And that was the thing. That was the frustrating thing, was that how do you justify saying, and I understand the numbers to it, but you went with an expanded roster to make sure that you had enough people to cover. There's no reason that Baltimore, I can see a one-time exemption. Maybe you bump it from Thanksgiving to Monday. Well, originally it was to Sunday, but I think they were better off taking it from Sunday and putting it on Monday right off the bat. Would have been better. Keep those people isolated, and maybe you have enough people. It gives everyone enough time to adjust.
Yeah, you're right.
You go from Sunday to Monday to now Wednesday.
I forgot that it was even originally on Thanksgiving. They've pushed it an entire week. Like, at that point, just cancel it. Make the Ravens forfeit. Like, there are procedures in place. And I know that, was it Connor for the Steelers came out as positive over the weekend too? It's like, come on. You can't be throwing shade at them and then getting tested positive yourself. But I feel like at that point, just go with it. They had from Thursday to Sunday, because you're right, they had an extra couple of days to just get it ready. And now they've just been pushing it back every day. Like, I know that they're trying to make sure that people aren't testing positive before they travel. But I would think that you get everyone in the facility on Saturday or Friday after Thanksgiving, test them there, and then whoever's ready, you're ready to go on Sunday, and you fly right there. Because, like, I don't even understand why they had to fly up today. Like, it's an afternoon game. What did they announce the actual time is? Let's take a look. Because by the time you're listening to this, the game's probably going on, or if you commute to work or whatever, you might be able to hear it. But they have it at 3:40. So it's strange all around. Like, just have them travel in the morning. They're a 3-hour drive. It can't be that long of a flight. And you have a private jet or whatever. You can just fly right in, bus everyone over to this game, and then bus them back. That's even in college, whenever they're like messing around, traveling, and then the teams are infecting each other because they're sharing the same facilities. It's like, why?
See, Baltimore needs to think outside the box. They should get those planes that they can just land right on the water. They could land right in front of Heinz Field and then just get right off and go to the stadium.
They could even paint it like a raven, and it'd be pretty sweet. People will see it coming.
They see the Ravens coming.
I don't know if the Ravens strike fear into people anymore. maybe last year. But
Maybe before their whole team got COVID.
well, I'm wondering if that's why. I mean, you can't do the forfeit. I don't know what the rules are for that. If they just did it a no contest or whatever. But if they put them there, then they're already on the way out. Because right now they would be out of the playoffs. They're the 8 team, and then they'd be a half game back of the Colts and the Dolphins. So as teams were talking about being careful to miss, I think that the NFL wants the Ravens in. And so I think that pushing it back to try to play this game was their way of saying, like, look, this will be a big time win for them. And if they lose, it definitely hurts them. But now they're playing without their quarterback. Maybe they were hoping that he would come back. I don't know.
But just being on that jacked up schedule, I think hurts Pittsburgh too, because they were prepared for Sunday. They were prepared, these other days. I'm not saying that they're not going to be prepared tomorrow night, but I think when you're the team waiting to see when you're going to go, I think it's different than Baltimore playing a little bit closer to the vest and being, they can say, oh yeah, we're definitely going to go on Sunday. We're definitely going to go on Monday, and kind of just play it knowing that how long do they have to try to drag this out to get guys back. And so now they're in a spot where they can go, all right, well, if we get to Wednesday, we have enough guys that we can compete, and here's the way, like, we can take advantage of the game plan. It's easier for them to know what they have going in as opposed to what Pittsburgh's having to guess who's going to play where.
And the Steelers now, that's the second time they've had their schedule just flat out messed up because of coronavirus from the other team. And I know, luckily they're at home and they get the next game at home because the Washington Redskins game got pushed to 5 p.m. next Monday. So that's who they play next. The Redskins aren't very good this year.
They are very good this year. They have a great running back, Gibson.
Matt, you got to be joking. That division was awful. They could win their division.
Riverboat Ron, baby.
They could win their division, but I wouldn't really say
they will win it. Go ahead and say it. Put your money down.
I wouldn't say that game strikes fear into me. And now the Ravens even less so. But the Steelers could be looking at 12-0 and going into another shortened week against the Bills. And I think that's where they really hurt. And I could see that game being a blowout. I don't think that Washington has enough to blow the Steelers out. We'll see. Maybe this messed up schedule will have them coming out flat against the Ravens. Luckily, the Ravens have a backup quarterback that hasn't really been successful. So I would still think that the Steelers win the game. Ravens are without, I think they said 4 extra guys. They were able to get some back, but it didn't include Lamar Jackson. And so what's the line? Steelers by 10 is the line right now. Like, I know, is at the tight end. Andrews is out possibly. I don't know. I didn't read the whole thing. So they're missing a bunch of different people. And so you got 2 weeks coming up. Steelers could be looking at 12-0. I think they get it done. What do you think?
Yeah, I do think they're going to get it done. I mean, they're definitely chomping at the bit, and I think this is a chance for a rivalry game for them to really make a statement, because they seem to be taking it more personally now that Baltimore's dragging this out the way they are, and it's affecting other games too.
And that's why we have to pick both. That's why I just threw them both together. I think they win. I think they go 2-0. By the time we meet next Tuesday, they'll have beaten the Ravens and they'll beat the Redskins at home. And then it will be us talking about how do they look. Were they banged up? Did more people get sick? What's going to be the outlook for the Bills game? Because the Bills could be their last toughest game. I mean, they end with the Colts and the Browns, but realistically, the Colts are at home, and the Browns haven't been able to really get over that Steelers hump. So you're potentially taking an undefeated season, Matt. A couple weeks ago, I would never even anticipated that.
No.
So, and I would hate for it to be a beatdown for the Bills.
Chase Claypool.
Hey, let's just, like I said, get that. If they lose to the Bills, rest the team the next 2 weeks. Like, I don't even care about the Colts loss. I guess it depends on the Chiefs, because you probably want that bye in the playoffs. But if that's somehow where it's guaranteed, I would rest the team against his last couple games. Like, who cares? But I mean, if you're undefeated, you got to go for it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you don't want to blow it and then go right to the playoffs, because then if you could have been a bunch of close, but not so close. I mean, the Patriots got close enough where everyone always talks about their undefeated season. Doesn't matter that they won the Super Bowl; they still talk about the undefeated season. I think I saw ESPN talking about it this weekend for the games, and I was like, why?
Well, I was just going to ask you, if they win it all and this Baltimore game ends up getting canceled, do you put the asterisk by it?
Wait, by what?
Like, if by the undefeated season, if this Baltimore game ends up getting a forfeited.
I wouldn't say that game's getting a forfeit, but I don't care. I mean, the Dolphins still celebrate their undefeated season. How many games did they even play?
It wasn't as many.
Yeah, it wasn't
12
nearly as
14.
many. Let's look and see. What did they do? 1972, the Broncos ended up going 14-0. Does that include the playoffs? Because that'd be funny if it did. No, that was just the regular season. So they went 14-0. The Steelers right now are 10-0. Heck, they get to 14-0, and the rest of the games are canceled. Count it. Like, I honestly, I'm being serious, because what's the difference? You can't say, oh, the Dolphins undefeated, greatest team ever, undefeated, whatever. It's not like they were undefeated for 17 games or whatever it is now. So just go ahead and count. Is it 16-0? I don't even know. Did they add that other game? Because now you're adding so many games. I don't even know if it's a real record that could be broken or that people would want to try to count anyway. But the one thing that really stands out to me right now, the Chiefs 10-1, they're the ones that you have to look out for, because you don't want them to have any advantage in the playoffs. So if the Steelers can go ahead, even if they end up losing to the Bills, I wonder what the tiebreaker scenario would be in that situation, because their division, I think the Steelers would still have the nod because of the division record. But I'm not 100% sure if that actually counts. So let's go ahead and see if they can get the bye. I think the bye is such a big thing with Roethlisberger, and I think these extra weeks might actually be helping him anyway. He's been beat up. Now he's had Thanksgiving dinner. He's got it all into. He's all ready. So I think that's going to be a big thing. Anything else you got for the NFC or AFC? I mean,
no.
I know I don't want to. I feel like I'm just complaining about like coronavirus stuff, but those are the biggest stories, and it messed up our entire show. Can't talk about the Steelers.
But I think when you look at, like, as far as the NFL stuff goes, they're pretty much saying, like, here's what you have to do. Like the Raiders are the prime example of, like, continually just saying, I'm going to defy whatever rules you have. And they continue to get hit with fines and losing draft picks and everything else in the process for not following these NFL guidelines. I think that's where you see Denver getting hammered too, is the fact that if they were following those guidelines, even if the whole room would have gotten COVID while they're wearing their masks sitting in the quarterback room, I don't think the NFL would have hammered them as hard. But it just seems like they're really overboard with the additional protocols.
Well, I think they're worried that the season will be canceled or whatever, because I think that is the big question. Everyone's worried about, okay, what happens now? Cases are going through the roof. States are pushing teams out, because as I gear towards the NFC, that's the big storyline. San Francisco, they're getting pushed out of their home stadium because of a mandate where you can't have contact sports. Is it Santa Clara? Is that where they are?
Yeah.
So they've been just told, like, hey, we know you were having 2 home games coming up, but bye-bye. And, like, if you're an owner, all those cities and stuff complain about, oh, teams are leaving. Why are they leaving? Like, this would be a prime scenario for the 49ers to just be like, all right, if it comes up, we'll just be gone. Like, I know they built that gigantic stadium that's kind of out of the way, and so I don't know how that looks in terms of getting people there. But, like, if the city doesn't help you, Because like the Steelers they had the Pittsburgh pass that one thing where all football players had to wear masks, and then they were like, "Hey, what? This can't happen." And then they're like, "Oh, but they're exempt now." Like the Steelers just called, and then the government helped them out. Like that was their mandate or whatever. They changed it specifically for the Steelers and Pitt. That's it. I mean, that's exactly why it changed. They even said it. Even the state of Michigan, when Whitmer's putting in all the orders for them, she specifically wrote out that we talked about last week, professional and college sports are exempt. And she said because of the testing. But like there's no reason why the 49ers couldn't get an exemption. Or if I were like, are they gonna let them not pay taxes then? Whenever they go play somewhere else? Like is that like if I were them, why would you pay?
Absolutely.
So I mean, you're not letting us play there, and that's like the big business question from it. And I mean, now they got to play. I think they had 2 home games. Now it looks like they're going to the Bills, and then, or no, they were supposed to play the Bills at home in Washington. So I'm not sure where they're playing actually.
I thought it was Arizona.
I think it might be Arizona. You're right, but are they sharing the stadium with the Cardinals?
I don't know that. I just saw Arizona, so I don't know if they were going to use like a college stadium or I just saw Arizona.
And so they were in a position to possibly sneak in. I don't see it happening now. I mean, they would have to win. The Cardinals keep choking and losing. There's actually been rumors that Tampa Bay hasn't been focusing that much on the games because they know that if they don't win the division, then they probably have a chance to play the NFC East team, which seems so absurd. They're like, hey, we know that if we don't win the division, we're going to be right there for a wild card spot. So if we drop a few games, we'll just end up playing the 4-7 Giants, which is crazy to me. But I mean, possibly where they're sitting right now, they're a half game behind the Rams. So I would assume that the Buccaneers have a bye this week.
Yes.
Yeah. So they have their bye. So if the Rams lose, they're tied right there with the Buccaneers, and they're fighting for the chance to play the Giants. Or it could be the Redskins. We don't know.
We do know. Riverboat Ron's going to pull them through.
Well, Alex Smith, I still like. I think he was a great driving force for the 49ers. And looking back, I think if Harbaugh would have switched back to him in that Super Bowl year, then I think they probably would have won the Super Bowl. They stuck with Kaepernick, but once he got into the Super Bowl, the Ravens kind of had him shut down, and that was it. Like, I think if they would have came out with Alex Smith randomly, or even in the playoffs, like I think they would have at least at the minimum had the same result. So that's my final opinion on that. But I think Alex Smith is vastly underrated. And he basically was the quarterback that helped them pull together the Chiefs and build up to what they had until they were able to draft Mahomes. Because without him, do you have all those other pieces and stuff? I know moving him opened a lot of stuff up. And that brings me back to the Eagles. The Eagles could have did the very same thing with Carson Wentz. Because I still have people argue with me over this. After Wentz was injured or whatever, he was still rated very high. You have a guy that wins you the Super Bowl. And I know he's injured this year. But I'm not saying that Foles would have been a long-term thing for the Eagles. But you can trade Wentz for a ton of picks, unless you're Bill O'Brien. And you can sit there and you can say, all right, we got a guy that we have. I think they built a statue of him, right? Like you got rid of the guy you built a statue of outside your stadium. Just keep him for a couple years. I mean, the worst he could have done was what? Won you guys another Super Bowl? And then you trade Wentz, and now you don't have a decimated roster. Because as it went, they traded Foles. He didn't have as high as a return. And now they're left with a rebuilding roster. So I still think that's dumb. I watched them play the Seahawks, and they were pathetic. Like the Seahawks weren't even playing good, and I knew the Eagles had no chance to win that game. So it's just baffling. I mean, Russell Wilson has been such a disappointment for me. He's probably going to lose me my fantasy chance at the playoffs or championship because, Matt, Taysom Hill has been scoring more points at quarterback than him. It's like, what are you doing? Underthrowing deep balls. At least he didn't turn the ball over. So, I mean, he has that going for him, and they're winning. But in the NFC now, I don't even know who I would pick to win because all of the top teams have flaws. Tampa Bay, I mean, I don't know what the heck they're doing, but they need to just go out there and figure out their offense. Tom Brady almost upset the Chiefs with 2 interceptions. Like they lost by a field goal. Quit throwing the ball up. Like one of them is just a throwing up to grabs to their small like slot receiver. I think that guy is. It's like, dude, you have Evans, Godwin, Antonio Brown. You're throwing to number 10. I don't even know his name. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? It's getting intercepted. Like you have big guys. You have Gronk. I mean, you have Brait as the backup tight end. You have legitimate weapons. And you're throwing a jump ball up. Of course it's going to get picked off. Like, what do you think you're doing? And so I think if Tom Brady can settle down, that's just how scary that team could be. If you throw out the Saints beat down, because I think that they got beat down by them twice. But I mean, if you believe the rumors, they think that they were just setting that up to try to get that NFC East matchup. But all their other 3 losses, lost by a field goal or less. And in the playoffs, if the game's going to be that close, I'm counting on my man Tom Brady. He won't be throwing jump balls up to number 10 in the playoffs. So, I don't know.
He will, because the rule is he has the physical tools. Why would you trust Mike Evans? Why does he not throw the ball to him?
Well, he already did. Like, Evans had to have how many yards and carries? He's leading the team in receiving yards. He has 11 touchdowns already. But it's like, all right, if you're going to mix it up, throw to one of the other guys. I know he takes some deep shots to Brown, and it looks like they're still out of sync a little bit. Probably because Brown, who knows what he's even been doing? Has he been working out?
Because Brown's running really fast, and Brady's old arm can't throw it that far.
No, he's overthrowing him. If you watch, he's overthrown him like at least 4 times that I remember. I mean, you can go back to tape. People can call me out on it. But there were times where it looked like Antonio Brown, in a couple of them, it looked like Tom was kind of leading him more to the outside. And so I don't know if he was like trying to shimmy the safety or I don't know what he was doing. But there are a couple times where he's not getting it done. But Gronk has no problem. He's always hitting him on the money. It just seems like he's not in shape yet either, to where they don't have him out there all the time. Same with Antonio Brown. Like, he's out there every third play or so. And then they're trying to get him the ball, but...
Well, I'm sure part of it's trying to learn Arian's system because he's trying to force his system on everyone as opposed to taking, what Brady was running in New England and what him and Gronk had known and trying to make that fit.
But it also seems like they're trying to just like get everyone their touches. Like they'll have a series where there'll be 3 passes in a row to Antonio Brown, and it's all very similar stuff. It's like, hey, we're going to start with a screen to you, then we're going to run it out, and then we'll try to take a deep shot to you. And it's like, even the commentators like, oh yeah, that was the Antonio Brown system. Like they have a card that's just like, all right, what next series is the Gronk series. Then he comes out of nowhere and he's getting 3 jump balls thrown to him. It's like, dude, just space it out. And maybe they're doing that on purpose. They're like, hey, I'm going to try to get you going. And then that way we'll know that if we need to come to this in the playoffs, we can. But like at this point, it's kind of becoming pretty obvious. Like, all right, now we know. As soon as I see the screen pass, like I know he's just going to be focused on Brown the next couple times. But I mean, I really think that unless things go crazy in the playoffs, like the NFC, they're kind of just like hit or miss. So like Green Bay could go off. I don't know if the Saints are going to get Drew Brees back. Seattle, if they're clicking, they can go off. Metcalf has been a beast. But they could also not show up. You could get 3 interception Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. You could have no Drew Brees. So then it's like, okay, who's the backup team? Tom Brady? Possibly. They said since McVay's been at Los Angeles, he hasn't lost a game where they had to lead at halftime. And they said he has like the second best record, maybe behind Belichick and Brady.
Did you just jinx the Rams?
Yeah, because I want Tom Brady to win. If an NFC East team is going to, or not even East, if an NFC team is going to win the Super Bowl, I want it to be Tom Brady. Because that would be sweet. What does he have, 6 rings already? 7 rings? He's almost running out of fingers, Matt.
If he just cut off the last 3, it'd be all right.
The commentators were talking about how Russell Wilson could play for 11 more years because of the new quarterback rules. I thought, if he's turning the ball over like he has the past couple weeks, no one's going to want him to play for 11 more years. Like, at some point, you have to be able to win the games. Like,
But I think Schottenheimer's still the offensive coordinator there. That's such a run-heavy system that it amazes me that they're able to get the stats that they were getting earlier this year.
that's very true. And maybe that's something where they're just getting into the thick of it and they're just going back to what's comfortable for them in running. I mean, that is how they scored their last couple touchdowns against the Eagles. I mean, Russell Wilson didn't play bad, just from a fantasy standpoint, like I said.
Because you figure this is the same offense that was there when Rex Ryan was running the Jets. So I mean, it's a very run-heavy system.
And that could be the case. I mean, the Rams have a big game against the Cardinals coming up. And I think that's going to push that division. Because the Seahawks, they might be able to cruise on that running game. The defense has been playing all right to get it done. It's really just when he turns the ball over. So maybe if they rely on that running, they'll take care of him. But do you think teams have Murray figured out? Is that why the Cardinals have been losing?
I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is it seems like they're trying to he's trying to drop back more. Like, he was throwing the ball really well earlier in the year. I think defenses are doing a good job getting into the throwing lanes. And I think where he's having more success is where they're using him in some of the RPO stuff and trying to get him outside the pocket and letting him run a little bit. But it's like they're handicapping him because of the potential shoulder injury. Because even the commentators asked Kingsbury about it, and he said, yeah, it definitely changes the way he calls the game because he's trying not to have Murray get hurt.
And I think that's the biggest problem with these small quarterbacks because they're most likely going to get hurt no matter what. You almost have to build it in where, like, what are you going to do? And I wonder if a team could just go back to giving them more options. Like, they do, like, the RPO, and he's going to, like, decide if he's going to run it or not. But why not bring a pitch man? Like, teams know you're doing that. Why not have the slot receiver run behind you and give you an option so you're taking one less hit? And I'm surprised that they don't do it enough, or even just always have the tight end out there that you can just flip it to. And if it's incomplete, it's incomplete. But they're not, like, the offenses haven't adjusted yet to that, because once they get a quarterback's tendencies down, there's no third option. And I think that's why, like, Army and Navy have been able to run that system for so long, is you can try to shut down one or two, but there's always that last, okay, here's our last ditch effort. Because if you have that third option, like, okay, this guy's out behind me, what am I going to do? Flip it to him? I think the problem right now is, like, their slot guys want Larry Fitzgerald. Like, he's not going to be running around. I mean, he's 100 years old himself. So you almost need, like, a shifty type guy, like even like a Tyreek Hill. That would be scary as hell if he was out there just getting extra touches for no reason. I mean, he already gets a ton of yards and points anyway. So that would be the one thing that I think, write this down, because as the offenses continue to shift, that's going to be the next thing. Because right now, only certain teams have, like, that other outlet. And if you do that and you're trying to do more pass-heavy stuff, like, you're going to lose one other guy running a route to kind of give you another safety valve. But realistically, is the quarterback, if he's going to be focusing on running anyway, is he realistically going to go through every single progression? Probably not. So I would wonder if they're going to start getting guys moving outside of the pocket and things like that. Because that's what their strength is. I know you don't want them running around either, because kind of like it brings you back to like an NBA argument. Is LeBron running around too much on his knees? Like, what's that minute limit? Could a quarterback have that same limit? Like, if there's too many run plays called for him, does that shorten his career? I mean, it's a lot easier just to drop back and stand there and then hurry up and just throw the ball away.
But I think some of that, though, you can almost look at Kyler Murray the same way you look at Lamar Jackson, the same way you look at other mobile quarterbacks, is that when they have that tendency of defensively, what you want to try to do is try to make the quarterback be your ball carrier, so you get those extra hits on him, and he ends up getting banged up in the process. You know, you look at how many extra hits does Cam Newton take a year, and it's definitely shaved years off of his career. You know, and you have a fast running back, even though you're going to get gashed for plays here and there over the course of a season, over the course of playoff runs. A lot of those guys are showing you that it's tough to win in that situation.
And that's very true. And that's where I think that's what I said. Like, I think you got to start taking that next step and saying, okay, what can we do to help this guy out? Because if not, you have a dynamic quarterback, you're hoping to win by year 3 or 4, or you're not going to have that window. I mean, like, just look at Russell Wilson. He had the chance. He's been taking hits. He hasn't really missed any games, but they definitely got the book on him. Hasn't done anything since. I think a lot of guys, they win that first one, that's it. And even then, if they don't get it, that's why I want to see what the Chiefs do. Mahomes is more of just a passer, though. So what's he going to do? Is he going to be able to capitalize and just start winning Super Bowls? I don't know. They're winning the close ones now, but we'll see. I did have one other topic before we get into college stuff. The Detroit Lions fired Patricia. I'm surprised that it took that long. But the big thing for me is, like, why not make it now? Like, you're 4-7. You're really not out of the playoffs if you hit a run. I mean, you can win out. I don't think they will. But I'm surprised that the way that team started and the expectations, that they just didn't do it a little bit earlier. Like, you had a chance. You went 0-2 against the Colts and the Vikings to put you down, whatever the record would have been there. They barely beat the Redskins. Make the change before that game, and potentially you're looking at a team that had a very winnable game at the Panthers. You got blanked. Fire them then so you don't get embarrassed on Thanksgiving. I mean, if those are all winnable games where if you're going to try to make a run, because right now, who knows what the staff even is going to do. Like, what is the future of the Lions? You're either believing in Matt Stafford or just get rid of him.
Maybe trade him to Pittsburgh.
I don't know. We want winners, Matt. I like my guys to win games.
He could win. He just has to get out of Detroit.
We don't know that. We don't know. I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, Falcons, they've been blowing teams out once they got rid of their toxic coaching staff. They're what, 0-5? And now their last couple, they've been 4-2. What if they did that earlier?
They should have.
Yeah, everyone was talking about it earlier. So
Never
the Lions are in the
Shanahan
same thing.
leave.
Sometimes you just have to get rid of your coach. Especially in the NFL, everyone recycles anyway.
Well, I think it just goes back to a lot of these guys, like the NFL just is so sick. They're so cyclical with immediately going to New England and it's like, who's the coaches with Belichick? We'll hire one of those guys. They know what they're doing. And just because he's had success there hasn't equated to success anywhere else.
And that's what annoys me because the NFL seems so obsessed with these coaching trees that, like, looking at what the Lions are doing, they're like, who should we bring in? Should it be Eric Bieniemy, or Robert Saleh from the 49ers. Like those are their top two picks right now. And I think I'm saying his name right, Saleh. He was mentioned last year. Didn't
Yeah.
get picked up. But like realistically, now they're talking about Bieniemy being possibly the coach in waiting after Andy Reid. For the Chiefs, it's like, what kind of stuff is that? Is this college? You're having a coach in waiting? But I mean, I guess if you want to do that, but I think they should call him. I would be more excited about him than the 49ers because defense doesn't win you games in the NFL that much anymore. You got to be able to score points. Why not at least take a crack at getting the Chiefs blown up? Because you don't want them to just sit there. I mean, if you don't make that hire and they make him the head coach and they win like 2 or 3 Super Bowls with him, then you look like an idiot. At least call him and make him say no if you're the Lions. And try to change your whole culture. I mean, you've been losing for how many years? Come in and say, like, look, what was Andy Reid doing with the Chiefs? Let's get it done. Because other than that, you have to find your own Andy Reid, a guy that's been floating around, that has been successful, that just can't get over the hump. And, I mean, obviously the Steelers aren't going to get rid of Mike Tomlin, a guy that fits that mold, or like the other choice.
There's Jason Garrett.
Jason Garrett could be a chance. But you also have to think, I don't think he's really an Andy Reid type. I mean, Andy Reid was pretty consistent with the Eagles. I think he had some bad luck with quarterbacks and stuff. I mean, Garrett couldn't even get to the Super Bowl with Tony Romo.
He was close if Romo didn't get hurt.
I mean, Andy Reid would have won a Super Bowl with the Eagles if Donovan McNabb would have showed up. You can't play on offense with only Terrell Owens out there. I felt so bad for my man not getting that Super Bowl win. He's like the Barry Bonds of NFL. Only guy showing up. I'd say anything else for the NFL?
No.
This week's so messed up. I mean, college is messed up too, because I have on here that Ohio State is on the verge of missing the Big Ten championship game, because what it's looking like, the Big Ten, I don't know if we talked about this probably whenever they brought it back, if you've been listening to the show. Definitely check out our website if you haven't been, southboundsports.com. All of our shows are right there. They are free. I've got to talk about this at the top of the show. Shows are free, so tell your friends. People have been asking about a subscription, so I've been trying to make that clearer with some changes to the website. You can listen right there. And if it doesn't work on your player, you can open the MP3 right in your browser and just download it right from the website. You don't have to use any other app. You can be on your computer, listen to it directly. I'm putting links to the other platforms if you want to subscribe, but you don't have to pay if you do. So use a free app. There are a couple that I have listed there. Spotify, you can listen for free. They might throw ads at the end or something, but our website doesn't have ads. It's all free right there. But Ohio State, they have to play a certain amount of games in the Big Ten. Right now, they only have 4 games, I think. And I guess I could look that up since we're doing a show. But they're dangerously close to canceling this Michigan State game. And so I'm wondering what's going on there, because Michigan would be their last game. That would be game number 5 if this one's canceled. I don't know what the threshold is. I think if they lose one more, then they're out, because everyone else will be playing, 8, 7? Like, I think it has to be only one less than the average or something like that. It's like a weird rule that they have in place. So I don't know if it was preemptive, if it was like a team rule or something, but the entire Michigan team got tested apparently on Sunday, and so only one came back positive so far from what I've heard. So they're probably going to be ready to play. So everything is going to be back on the side of Ohio State. And I know that could change in a week. They have all the positive tests. They're trying to see, they have enough negatives now that they can reopen practice, I think, today. Are they going to have enough to play Michigan State this weekend? And if not, does the Big Ten just change the rule? Because right now, if they don't play, it would be Northwestern. I think they clinched already, and they're going to be playing Indiana. And Indiana just lost their quarterback, Penix, for the rest of the year. I think he tore his ACL, possibly.
Get out of here.
So, I mean, the Big Ten's looking at a complete mess now. You're looking at telling Ohio State that, hey, you're ineligible, and we're going to play Indiana without their quarterback. And then after that, I don't even know who would be next. I mean, Michigan plays Maryland. Maryland's only 2-2, so they don't have enough games played. And if you go down that list, if Michigan State misses another one, they're at 5. They're at 5 games too. What if the game came down to a championship where it was like including a 2-win Michigan team or a 3-win Michigan team? Because that could be, if Indiana, I mean, obviously Indiana would be qualifying and they would be in unless like something happened, because I wonder if a team would test positive, what's the backdrop for that? Like if Indiana gets tested positive where they can't play in the Big Ten championship game, do they substitute? Do they move the game? They scheduled it right before the playoff selection. So this is going to be a crazy week. The game within the game. Which team will show up? And we'll see. The Big Ten's been known to do shady things in the past. And so I wonder if Indiana, them knowing that Indiana has an injured quarterback, if they're going to try to put the Buckeyes in, no matter what.
Well, I mean, realistically, does it matter? The Big Ten championship, like at this point, does that affect Ohio State's ability to play in the college football playoff?
Well, that's my question for you, because according to most of the media and stuff, they're saying like they wouldn't vote for them. They don't actually have a vote though. And I think if you're looking at it, I don't see how they can say, hey, Ohio State, you guys have 4 wins. You're in the playoffs. And then they leave out Cincinnati and BYU without a lawsuit. Because I think that could really push the playoffs to extend. Because Ohio State has beaten nobody. I mean, what can you say on their schedule? They beat Indiana. That's it. You're telling me that Indiana's not good enough to play for the Big Ten championship then? I mean, they beat Nebraska, Penn State, and Rutgers. I think combined, those teams have what? 4 wins themselves? Like, throw out Indiana, that's it. So your argument can't say Indiana's so strong, they're a top 10, 12 team that Ohio State definitely beat them and they deserve to be in. And then you're looking at, okay, well, they only played 4 games and they only won by 1 score. What if Indiana's the Big Ten champs with only 1 loss to Ohio State? And I want to say that that game was on the road for Indiana. It was at Ohio State home stadium. So I think Indiana would have a beef, too, along with those other schools and saying, like, look, Ohio State didn't play the other games. If they had played even 7 games or close to the same schedule, but if they get stuck here only playing 4 games, what can you do? The other backdrop would be there's not just a championship game for the Big Ten. Everybody is supposed to play week 9. So right now, Ohio State would have to play, I think, Iowa. And they've been looking pretty decent in that Plains game. So what if the Big Ten says, oh, they're ineligible for this, but they're going to play against Iowa, and the college football playoff says, well, if they handily beat Iowa, then they're in.
I mean, to me, that
maybe
I would be okay. I would be okay in that scenario, because then you're playing somewhat the games that you're available to play. If you're soundly winning, on the eye test, Ohio State's been one of the top teams. Then I think you have to keep them in the running.
And that's where I would say, I mean, you're bringing a bunch of people in. You got rid of the computers. I wonder if someone is doing the BCS computers this year, because the one thing that would really stand out to me is the Big 12. I have later on here that Bob Stoops is back. I'll talk about that at the final bell. But the Big 12 right now are ranked so high in the college football playoffs, and I don't know why. Like, did they not remember that 3 of their teams, including ones that are ranked super high, lost to Sun Belt teams? The Sun Belt is not good. There is no reason that you could go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to put Indy or Iowa State top whatever, but you can't put Coastal Carolina in there. If you're saying that the Big 12 is so good and they have all these teams ranked in the playoff ranking, Coastal Carolina should be a top 8 team. Because right now they're undefeated in the Sun Belt.
They are undefeated, but they have the test because they're playing Liberty. So that'll be a good game of this weekend.
They're playing Liberty, and then they're going to play at Troy, and then are they going to have to play Louisiana again? But still, I honestly, if I was them, let's say they go undefeated with that schedule, that's so ridiculous that if they would put a 2-loss Oklahoma in the playoffs somehow above them, I mean, I would just think that it would have to be open to lawsuits.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to take for the college football playoff to expand. You can't tell me that these schools can't be in. Like, there's nothing else that Coastal Carolina can do. They had 3 schools from that conference beat Big 12 schools. The Big 12 decided, hey, we're going to play some non-conference. We're going to beat up on the Sun Belt. They lost 3 games. In a normal year, that would never be forgiven. Everyone would be talking about how the Big 12 is down. But because the Big 10 started late and because the Pac-12 started late, like I would, if I was ahead of those conferences, I would be talking about how the Big 12 lost to the Sun Belt every interview. Because I feel like the media forgot. They were like, "Oh, this is so long ago. We had the start of whatever. We did this, we did that." I just don't think, like, looking at it, that there's any way that you could tell those teams, like, yo, you don't deserve to be in.
Well, speaking of starting late, the ACC decided they're changing their testing protocol now. So nothing like having the season almost done and then finally getting it right. Because of the issues that they've had, they finally said each team will be required to have their test administered on Thursday with the result prior to the visiting team traveling, so that each team can confirm the results and make sure that they know that they're going to play the game, which eliminates any people traveling that have COVID, that people show up and say, oh, by the way, we're positive. So I think it's great for the ACC, but going back to some of the other issues, why did they just allow Dabo Swinney to go on his rant for an entire week of nonsense and not just shut him down and go, we followed protocol? Like, the protocol was not followed, and that's why you didn't play that game. Where on the opposite side, you had Bronco Mendenhall from Virginia say they knew that they didn't have those results and they were still traveling down. Like, they said, we knew that the players were tested. We didn't know what the results were, and didn't blame Florida State for it, but just said, hey, they followed what the protocols are. The protocol sucks. Well, the ACC's fixed it. So all around, like, is it stupid? Yes, but they're getting it right. 3/4 of the season over.
Well, that's why, because I went on that big riff against Clemson. I was waiting to see if anyone was talking about players from Clemson being out, and I didn't even know if anyone was even talking about it. Because that was going to be my big thing. You were saying that you followed the stuff, your doctors did whatever, but was it 5 players from Pitt missed because of that? But it goes back to the same thing. Pitt waited for the players to test, didn't have them travel. Clemson didn't wait, traveled with them.
Yeah.
And so then that's where the problem is. And I still have the players. So I think that I'm looking it up right now to see. So the state said Clemson will be without several key contributors Saturday. So they definitely had a COVID outbreak. I mean, they definitely did. Florida State was still in the right. I'm surprised that ESPN didn't even report this at all. Like, I have to go to the South Carolina newspaper. I'm trying to see if I can read to see if that was why they were out or if they were just injured. But I know Pitt didn't travel with guys. And they were talking about Pitt before. Oh, they had positive tests. Dabo called them out. But it's like, okay, so they called him out. You're right. But did they wait for the test? Because someone could test positive, but if they're not in contact with anyone on the team, what is the difference? That's why the NFL, I think they took so long for the Ravens. They kept giving them the benefit of the doubt. They were saying like, oh, those guys, did you isolate them? Yeah. Well, let's run another test. Oh, you had a few more positives? Well, let's just run a few more tests and we'll push the game back for you. We'll keep pushing the game back for you. But at some point, it's going to be like, all right, what are you going to do? And so Clemson, like, yeah, they got those games canceled. The ACC, though, they're not going to change anything because they're on top of the playoff rankings right now. Notre Dame, 9-0, Clemson at 3. And then realistically looking at this, if Ohio State's out, the playoff's going to be such a joke this year because they're shoving in Texas A&M and Florida right behind them. I know Florida's going to have to play Alabama, so that should eliminate Florida. But will it? Because they have Cincinnati, followed by Georgia, and then 2-loss Iowa State at 9, which is my beef. How is Iowa State ranked 9 whenever they have losses to Louisiana, double-digit loss? We've talked about it in depth before. How? And then Coastal Carolina's at 18. That same Louisiana team that only lost to Coastal Carolina is ranked 25th. I'm pretty sure that's who they lost to, yeah. So it doesn't make any sense. Are they trying to push Iowa State in as that 4th team if Ohio State can't make it? And then if you do, how can you honestly say that they're the 4th best team? Like, you can't. You can't sit there and say, and I guarantee that when the ratings tank because of shoving in bullshit like that, then they're going to say, oh, well, it was coronavirus. Like, it had nothing to do with that, with pushing a team in. Because I just don't see how they can let out Cincinnati, BYU, or Coastal Carolina if those 3 teams end up undefeated. Like, even if Indiana wins out, they're 1 loss, Ohio State's ineligible or whatever, do you jump them into the playoffs? No. Even with the healthy quarterback, I would say no.
No.
I wouldn't even put them in above Cincinnati.
But that was also, I think, going back to that earlier conversation of how high do you rank people when you put them in. It was like they kind of rigged the deck when the Big Ten came back to try to guarantee they had the best shot at the best horse getting in. So they put enough teams in the top 25 in relatively high spots to guarantee that even if somebody stumbles, you still have enough of a seat. To me, I think right now, I don't know that Clemson, with all their COVID issues, I don't know that they survive. I mean, I think that they're not blowing teams out the way they did the past 2 years.
But Matt,
and I think when you
I'm reading the article right now. They had 17 players out. They said Clemson did not reveal specifics on why each player was out. The Tigers changed the way they are reporting injuries due to coronavirus. They are only announcing players as available or not available. So Florida State is 100% in the right. They knew that Clemson had a major breakout. 17 players is a ton of players because they let that guy travel with them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why Dab was not under fire for more of these issues.
Well, they're going to let it work itself out because what's going to end up happening is now they can't play. Those 17 guys can't play. They're being out, and now they're going to potentially lose a game or two because when you have that much star power out, it's going to cost them. And I think you can end up seeing. I don't see Notre Dame losing a game. I don't see them losing out. So you'll have Notre Dame in. I think you'll have. I think Bama's susceptible to losing. I think they could potentially fall out.
That would be a nightmare. If Bama loses, that puts Florida in the playoffs with Alabama and possibly A&M.
Well, I would think in this scenario, if Clemson bombs out, A&M goes in, and then you have your potential Cincinnati, BYU if they win out, have a shot. Because then you can always fall to the default of name your SEC school, whether it's A&M, whether it's Florida, or whether it's whoever. Well, as the 4.
This is how I would argue it. Alabama killed A&M. If Florida, I think Florida lost to A&M. So you're having a triangle situation. Because Alabama, the only other game they can lose is to Florida, right? In the SEC championship game. Like, I'm pretty sure that that's how it shakes out right now. I'll look it up right now. the Clemson problem is they only have 2 more games, and you're right. One of them is going to be the ACC championship game against Notre Dame. So do they luck out by having Taylor Lawrence back? Was it Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah.
You know why I said Taylor? Because he reminds me of that guy from the Hanson Brothers. What was that band? I think that was a boy band. I think one of their names is Taylor. Look that up. I'll say that, oh no, Alabama, they played Auburn. I was thinking that was their last game. But they're going to play Arkansas and LSU possibly. I don't see them losing either of those.
Arkansas is going to be better than they have been.
Yeah, but that's not that much better. They're not better than Alabama. Alabama already got through the tough part of their schedule.
SEC and just put SEC as one of the spots. Notre Dame is one of the spots. And then I think one of the two. I think Cincinnati or BYU should have a seat if they win out. I think one of the two gets in, and then you have Ohio State.
Well, the big thing is BYU almost got lucky because the Pac-12, they offered to play any Pac-12 game that was canceled. So say that if, like, let's say Cal had a bunch of coronavirus outbreaks and they're supposed to play UCLA, then BYU would just step in and play UCLA instead. And I think if that would have came to fruition, that they would have had a chance to get in. Because, I mean, Oregon already lost. USC, they're not going to put USC in. Because USC, I mean, they barely won their one game by 1 point to Herm. And so you're looking at a team like a schedule where half their games are falling apart. You just really can't put a team in. You're going to put in Washington undefeated. So BYU needs to catch a lucky break like that. Because Liberty losing, I know they don't really play them, but you have Boise out west. Like, they just don't have the non-conference games. Like, if Boise State had a big win or BYU was able to play Michigan State or someone and crushed them, then yeah. But they haven't even got to play Army yet. So they're begging people to play this weekend, and I don't think they're going to be able to find a game. Because I was looking at the dates. So the 12th is their last game against San Diego State. They crush them. I don't think it's going to move the needle. But Coastal Carolina, I think they have a real beef. And I think that if they keep winning and the Big 12 keeps winning, at the end of the day, like, they should just start putting ads out and saying, like, look, our conference beat their best. Like, if it was the basketball challenge between the Big 10 and the ACC, they've used that challenge in tournament selection and used that as a way to say, like, well, the Big 10 needs 7 this year, or the ACC needs 7 because of that challenge this year. And they've done it. Why not? Why not for the playoffs? Put them in. Alabama's going to crush whoever they play. They're going to crush Iowa State. If Iowa State's that 4th team, Alabama's going to crush them. And like you're saying, if Alabama loses, I think that would be the perfect draw, because I don't think Notre Dame would be able to blow them out. Notre Dame doesn't have the depth that Alabama has. So if Notre Dame was the 1 seed playing a 4th seed, you're setting up a potential national championship playing a who knows what, a Cincinnati. Like, that could easily be an upset. And that's why I think they're just going to let Ohio State hang out at that 4 line, because if Notre Dame ends up number 1, they're going to want them to play Ohio State. They're not going to want one of those other teams to sneak in. If Alabama stays number 1, I think they'll have enough hubris to just say, put them in. Put them in. We know Alabama's just going to crush them.
Well, I think in any of these scenarios, though, you also have the UCF factor, that even if you leave Florida hanging and you leave A&M hanging, there's enough, like, people that are on the outside in that have a loss, that if A&M feels like they legitimately have a reason to be in the college football playoff and they get left out, then play Cincinnati. If Cincinnati wins it all, like we've talked before, hang a banner, claim a national championship, because you've won all the games that you can. It's not your fault that you were left out of the playoffs. You won all the games you could play.
And that's why I would almost want to see there's rumors that Liberty might not be picked for a bowl, even though they only have one loss right now.
Oh, I saw that, and that is such a bunch of crap.
Because they don't have any tie-ins. And because all the bowls have been canceled. But like I said, I had already talked about it. I had a solution, Matt. You have your own college football playoff. I mean, they have whatever this college football playoff trademarked. You just say national championship playoff. I mean, I'm sure you could say whatever you want. Like, they say national championship for everything, so I would assume the NCAA owns that. And these are NCAA schools. And you just invite Cincinnati, BYU, Coastal Carolina, and Liberty. And I still think that would have a big million people turnout. Millions of people watch every bowl game anyway. Like, you can't tell me, it might not have 20 million, but you can't tell me if you have an undefeated Cincinnati playing like a Coastal Carolina for a chance to just claim national champion, people would tune in for that. And so my whole thing falls apart, though, if one of those undefeated teams drop a game. So they need to just keep winning and then do it. But I was really hoping that they would have 4. Because I guess they have Marshall, they can invite Marshall instead of Liberty.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you had 4 undefeated teams and then you claimed it, and then, like, after you win your tournament, just call out Alabama or whoever wins the regular one, and then you know that they're not going to play you. Because how embarrassing would that be? If by, like, some magical Colt McCoy injury type in the championship game, if they would upset Alabama. Because that would be after Alabama had already claimed that championship or whatever. Would Alabama still claim it? They claimed shady championships in the past, so I wouldn't put it past them. I had 2 other things, though, before we wrap up. James Franklin finally got a win in the big house. Couldn't even beat Brady Hoke. I don't know if that really gets him off the hot seat, although it seems like it has, because the Michigan team has been so bad. And, I mean, I really didn't bring up Harbaugh for the Lions, but that could be a way out if he wants to go to the NFL. There are a lot of mixed reporting. There's also rumors that Texas is going to push out Herman, because I think with their loss on Saturday, it pretty much eliminated them from the Big Ten championship, unless something crazy happens. So if Herman leaves, there already been talked about with Urban Meyer and possibly James Franklin. And I think that would be a perfect 1 and 2 for them. Because I think that right now, Urban Meyer I think he would take it. And if I was him, I would take it over USC. Because I know you coached at Utah, but at Utah you had a big pipeline with Texas. You came to Florida, you got the SEC pipeline, and you kept that Texas pipeline, because when he went to Ohio State right now, there's a big Texas pipeline for them that Urban Meyer set up. Urban Meyer's kind of like their Bob Stoops, who I have on here. So I'm going to transition to the final bell because I have my final thoughts on the coaching thing. Oklahoma was letting Bob Stoops just coach because Lincoln Riley's out with coronavirus. And I think because he's like he's part of the athletic department as like a senior head, which is kind of what Ohio State did with Urban Meyer. Like, Urban Meyer could be coaching with them, and no one really knows. So no matter what, I think it would be good if Urban Meyer did take another job. And if he wants it to be Texas, go for it. I mean, obviously, if Michigan needs a new head coach, I'd rather have it be Urban Meyer. He's my number 1. I think I
told you, that would be a pipe dream.
Well, Texas could be a pipe dream. We don't know. I think anyone having a number 1 coach, because, and I'll shoot down the pipe dream because, I mean, I don't have any insider information on it, but listen, Urban Meyer, he was clearly pushed out of Ohio State. If he wanted to get back at them, because he's a competitive guy, I mean, basically, everyone's talking about how Ryan Day is awesome. No one there really talks about Urban Meyer anymore. He just kind of got pushed aside. I know Ryan Day hasn't won a national championship, but if Urban Meyer really wanted to cement his legacy, he would just go to Michigan and win a national championship. Because then everyone at Ohio State that kind of pushed him out because of that scandal, And I mean, nothing really became of that. I don't think he has a show clause penalty from the NCAA or anything. The only problem with that is you're coming into Michigan and you got to get people to buy into the culture. I think it might be easier at Texas. And I definitely wouldn't do it at USC if I was him.
Well, I wouldn't do anything in California because you're going to be hit with additional COVID and like all these other restrictions. You're better off. Like Texas is a more accessible place. I think when you look at what he built at Ohio State, I think that's tough to turn around and go to the rival and knowing that there probably is some dirty laundry that's there at Ohio State that would rather not be aired and you know that it would hit the fan if he were to go to Michigan. That whatever skeletons are in the closet would be dragged out.
I think that cuts both ways, though. Like Ohio State's not going to try to bring him down because that would bring them down. Because if they start bringing stuff out, then that opens up an investigation at Ohio State. The athletic director's still there. Most of his coaches are still there. So honestly, I think that would be one of the safer locations for him. If he goes to Texas, Ohio State was already been throwing shade at Texas for stealing recruits and things like that with Herman. I mean, if you have that distance, I think it makes things a little bit rougher. But I honestly, like I said, I think no matter where he goes, Ohio State's not going to throw him under the bus because he could bring their whole program crumbling down with him. And
but
that
here's
would
the
just
other
be
thing.
dumb.
With Urban Meyer, he has nothing else to really prove other than he continues to get sick every time he takes over a program now. So here's one. Just stay with your family. Just be a commentator and cast judgment from your lofty throne.
But I think it eats him up. I think you can see it on TV whenever they bring up like Nick Saban. Like I honestly think that annoys the crap out of him. And now whenever they bring up Dabo Swinney, I think he's great on TV, to be honest. And that's why I said
on TV.
If anyone was looking for a coach, Penn State included, he would be the first guy I would call. And Penn State for the same reason that I would want Michigan to call. Like,
he's
why
an
not?
Asshole.
Why not?
Because he's an asshole.
Who cares? Matt, you're not paying to hang out with great coaches. You're not hanging out with the guy. You'll probably never meet him unless you shake his hand one time. I mean, we could get on the Zoom calls or whatever, like the press conferences and do that. But if I'm any of those schools, Penn State, Michigan, Texas, he's the first guy I call. And I say, what can we do to make you successful? Because if teams are going to throw $12 million at him, which is one of the rumors, like boosters are coming together already, and you're getting into a bidding war, that's going to be ridiculous. And he could just bomb out. You're betting on the guy to still be competitive. And number two, he's going to have to take down a bit of Ohio State to do it. Because Ohio State still has all his pipelines, all his recruiting and everything set up. A lot of their recruiting right now feeds from Texas. If he goes to Texas, I would guarantee that he's going to cut them off. Why would you go play to the second fiddle, Ryan Day, that hasn't won anything, when you could just go play for Urban Meyer? I mean, I would honestly think if you're a recruit and either of those guys walked into your room, like, what would you do? And then if he starts taking a bunch of those recruiting losses, Ryan Day, and it shows up on the field, then what? Does he jump to the NFL, which has been rumored in the past? I don't know. So, that's where I think Ohio State, they probably want to keep him away from coaching. Because I guarantee wherever he ends up, he's going to take some of that recruiting. And
his health.
Well, I've been worried that he's going to go to USC and not directly compete with Ohio State. But if he takes the Texas job, they're definitely going to be directly competing, just like Tom Herman has. Tom Herman just hasn't come out on top much. But Urban Meyer definitely would. And then it comes back to like the Nick Saban type stuff, where he could easily become that third pillar where you have Alabama, Clemson competing every year, and then Texas. Or honestly, wherever Urban Meyer goes. Because he got Ohio State to that level where right now they're barely playing games, and analysts and even the college football playoff, they're afraid to drop them out because they know that Ohio State has such a machine going right now from Urban Meyer that they could be in the playoffs no matter what. I mean, the other question would be like, is he going to wait for possibly Notre Dame? I don't know. I mean, that was one of his top 3 schools But again, so was Michigan on that list. Do things change because he coached at Ohio State already? I don't know. Unless he speaks about it, we don't know. He hasn't really commented on anything. His wife has been the one that she was the one that was rumored to be at Texas. And she's been the one that has made strong anti-Michigan comments in the past. But is that just because he was coaching at Ohio State at the time? I don't know. So,
Yeah.
We'll see. Because those guys have to be fired first. But Vanderbilt, South Carolina, I'd be calling them first. Get in there before those big dogs come open. I mean, if I was South Carolina, I'd say, look, Steve Spurrier did good here. I mean, you could easily come in and prove that you're the best coach at a smaller school. Anyone can take the big jobs and turn them around. I mean, it's not that hard. So that's my final thing. Bob Stoops is back. Ohio State would you be shocked if Ryan Day was sick? Because he's sick right now. What if Urban Meyer was just coaching this Saturday at Ohio State? Then I would say, okay, he's not coming to Michigan ever. But, Matt, he's not doing that. So it opens the door. That's all I'm saying.
Well, yeah, because he doesn't want to get sick before he does his TV show.
They would let him do whatever they want because they know he's like the best on that squad. So, you have anything for the final bell?
I just thought it was interesting with the openings at Vanderbilt in Southern Cal that there was some discussion about possibly having Jeff Monken interview Army's coach. And I've heard people complain about we don't want that kind of system here. Like, why would you? You're not winning with trying to compete with the same style of scheme that the Alabamas and stuff are. So why not try to do something different to give yourselves an advantage? I mean, if for nothing else, it's something different that people have to prepare for when it comes to your game, that it may give those teams an advantage. Because let's face it, you're not going to come in and within year 2 or 3 completely turn around South Carolina or Vanderbilt. It's not happening.
Well, I'll say this, because this is coming from my Michigan fan side. I will say that because I've seen the same things, and I've seen fans say that they would rather win with dignity and not try to be a tricky system like that, or hire a shady coach. They would rather lose. And I'm telling them they're wrong and they are idiots. Matt, you do not want to lose. If you want to hire that coach to get it tricky with it, perfect. Go for it. It's the same argument for people that they want Jim Harbaugh to stay as Michigan's coach because of how great he's been with players and graduating rates. The dude made tons of players transfer. If you're pushing out all the players that are struggling, of course your graduation rate's going to look good. That has nothing to do with it. And I've seen, I'm assuming they're coming from Harbaugh's camp, reports of look at all the players that have left us. That's why we're so young this year. It's you're in charge of recruiting and stuff. Your whole job is to win football games. So Vanderbilt, your new coach's job is to win. It doesn't matter how he wins. If you don't want to watch that style, root for a different team. But you can't tell me that you want to root for a 0-8 or 0-9 SEC team every year because they're doing it the right way. Because that is idiotic. And that's my final statement for the show. You have any thoughts on that?
No. We'll end it on that note.
Yeah, because that makes sense. You're paid to win. The other stuff is nice, and it makes good PR moments, but no one cares. That should be the recruiting director's job or the student whatever ambassador's job, or there's another position to help you get your guys to pass courses. I mean, Notre Dame went through that. They had theirs was helping them cheat. Remember that season they went 0-12 with all those forfeits. So we'll end that season on that, or the show on that. Go to southboundsports.com. Like I said, you can listen to the show free. It's free on there. We do it free on Facebook at 9 p.m. And it's also free on YouTube after. I usually put it up there, although most people just download it. So download it on the website. You can put in your favorite podcast player and listen there. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.